A mother! It's a mother! A mother!
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know who this be, it's your girl KylerB coming at you for a new video. So today we're going to be talking about Ginny Georgia season 2. This show came out in February of 2021, and now season 2 came back in January 2023. So it's about 2 years since, between each season. If you're new to my channel, I am a lifestyle entertainment channel. I'll do vlogs, social commentary on music, movies, and TV shows, and etc. So if you like my channel, you can check out my latest videos. The last video I had was basically last year of 2022, where I discussed all my faves of 2022. So if you want to see that video, check it out, and I'll link my video above so you can go check that out. So let's get right into Ginny Georgia. If you are new to my channel and you have not seen my season 1 in defense of Georgia Miller, where I speak about season 1, and I have my defense of Georgia Miller. So we're gonna have a part 2. Okay, so if you've seen the title of this video, it's In Defense of Georgia Miller part 2, where I'll be discussing and having my defense set up for Georgia Miller. I mean, obviously, if you've seen the season, you would realize why she needs it. I will be discussing the characters. I'll always start with the major characters first and then work down to the minor characters because, I don't know, it's a lot into this defense that we need to speak about. So I'm going to start with Ginny. Let's just get into it. Let's start with Ginny. Virginia Ginny Miller. Okay, she's the first person I'm going to be speaking about, before I get into my defense of Georgia Miller. Season 2 basically picks up where season 1 left off. Season 1 basically left off with Ginny getting on a Marcus's motorcycle, and then with Austin on the back, and then she went to her father's house, Zion's house. Yeah, so they spent, and this was basically during Thanksgiving, or in the late November during Thanksgiving. So that's where they spent, I guess, a few weeks there, a couple days there, or whatnot. And, Ginny is having this hatred for Georgia. The PI basically told her that Georgia killed Kenny with the Wolfsbane plant, and, basically finding out all these things about Georgia, and she's basically scared of her mother in some sort of sense, and she's worried. So she just has this hatred towards Georgia. So that basically spans the first 3 episodes, which you kind of feel annoyed about. Basically Ginny left home without telling where Georgia was, and it wasn't until, I guess, Zion filled in Georgia on what was going on. Georgia's basically 31, 32. Ginny is 16, so, even though she's supposed to be acting her age, she was just having this back and forth between her daughter. But then obviously she became the mature one. Zion also then learns about Ginny's self-harm, where she burns herself. So that was a lot. To talk about Ginny as a whole is just, I think Ginny, you gotta understand that in season 1, before Ginny found out about Georgia having this type of skeletons in her closet, or this troubled past, Ginny always had some type of underappreciativeness of her mother. Before the PI revealed anything, before she got this revelation that Georgia, is more capable of other things, you know what I'm saying? Because it's other stuff. Obviously, Ginny goes to therapy in this season, which was actually pretty needed for her to get help, because they said, in the show, she said that she started burning herself since she was 12. So it was just it's way before, recently that this happened. This was happening for some years now, and she never felt like she could tell anybody. So she finally was able to tell, Zion about it, and Zion wanted to tell Georgia immediately because, obviously Georgia is her mother. But she was like, no, don't tell mother, don't tell Georgia. So, obviously, against his own wishes, he decided not to tell Georgia and keep it a secret. I would say it's just like, you got to look back in season 1 with the behavior of Ginny. Her always snooping around in her mother's items and her mother's things, or trying to get, I guess, information out of her mother. That's where it stemmed from. You got to look back at that, because also when she was in therapy, she was saying that her mother doesn't have boundaries of her, but Ginny also doesn't have boundaries of her mother, if you're getting that point. She really doesn't. So it's kind of like, in this season, you hear Joe basically says that you have like a lot of quality traits like your mother, Georgia. She always keep on saying that she doesn't want to be like Georgia, but it's very much showing, like, a lot that you don't like about your mother is ending up in you. I like that this season basically try to give more depth into Ginny's past, or why is she acting the way that she acts. Give some more, I guess, meat and potatoes to a lot of these characters, because a lot of these characters are going through a lot. I think that one of the things that was basically a main focus is that Ginny, I guess, is mixed. She has a white mom and a black dad, and she's been with her white mom for the majority of her life, basically excluding her from her black family members. So when she goes into an all-white town, and then she gets these racism or subtle things happening to her, she feels that obviously Georgia wouldn't understand. Obviously in season 1, when Ginny straightened her hair, and Georgia was the one who said, like, why did you straighten your hair, like your hair when it was like, curly, or like the natural curls that she usually has. But it's just like things like that. So then when Thanksgiving came around, and Zion's parents and aunt came around, and Ginny didn't know what Jack and Jill was, and they were basically talking about how Georgia basically never allowed Ginny to, I guess, experience her black culture, or her, her heritage and things like that. It was basically one of the things that was also talked about in therapy. Like, Ginny was always moving around with Georgia. She never had a stable enough, environment for her to make a friend for a long time. So when she gets to Wellsbury, she's able to make a friend for a while and stuff like that. Because anytime something goes wrong, Georgia always packs up and leave. So, and I guess in therapy, she said that her burning started when she was 12 years old. I guess Georgia, she was supposed to go to a birthday party with her friend, and then Georgia basically packed her up somewhere else, where she missed out on, going to her friend's birthday party. And I guess to release the rage or whatever that she was feeling inside, that's when she started, harming herself. Which is just like, which it kind of like feels bad, because it's kind of like, you don't want to blame Georgia for what's happening, but it kind of basically seems like it is stemming from being blamed to Georgia, which is kind of like, you don't really blame it on Georgia, but that's where it seems like where Ginny is basically saying where it stems from, is her dealing with her mother, how she deals with how her mother operates and stuff like that. I would say Ginny is as very much still annoying as she was, but you obviously get, a little in-depth of what she's going through. She's going through depression and self-harm, and she's trying to get better, she's trying to be better. I do understand that when Georgia says that she will kill for her, she feels like that's a lot of weight to have on her. But you got to understand that it's not. Georgia always try to shield Ginny from all of that badness that has happened. Obviously you see in the flashbacks, when things are going bad, she's always shielding her and Austin from the negativity in their lives. So she would never know. Because Georgia never made it plain and simple to them, like, oh, this is what's going on. She always tries to, like she said, put on a smile, make sure everything's all right, even though they're going through dire straits. So it's only until the PI and her snooping around that, Ginny found out, okay, this is what happened, that's what happened. She kept her secrets, to herself, and she never intended on her children to find out about all the things that happened in her life. I like that towards the end of the season, you obviously hear Ginny, in her own words, basically appreciate the things that Georgia has done. And that was really, nice to see, like, okay, you're obviously coming to terms, like, you're obviously realizing and being appreciative of what Georgia's done. Because it's been said throughout the season, because even when they had that little joint therapy session, it just, Georgia feels like, everything that she does is never enough or is not good enough, and then she really be trying her best. So, and then when Ginny's always like, oh, this and this and that, it's just like, your mother is literally trying her best. I would say the whole Kenny situation, Georgia never explained that to Ginny, because Ginny was keeping this whole resentment and hate towards Georgia. So it was until the end of episode 3 where Georgia was like, this is the reason why this happened. She obviously saw what Kenny did to you, so this is what happened.
That's not nothing. And I may be wrong, and I may be horrible, and I may be ugly and not worthy of anything. Fine. I'm not worthy of anything. But you are. And it was up to me to make sure you got that. And I did that. Like it or not, I did that. I took all the darkness and I ate it. I became it. Like frickin' Bane. Okay? So that you, my daughter, could live a good life. I kept you safe. Because that hand doesn't stop on the thigh. And I spent my whole childhood wishing my mom would stop that hand.
She put in her speech that when she was at the young age, younger than you, her mom allowed her stepfather or her father to abuse her, and nobody came to her rescue. You know what I'm saying? Even though Georgia's tactics wasn't the proper tactics to go about, you got to understand her, why she did that. She didn't do that out of, I guess, she said she didn't really feel remorse, but she didn't do that out of, like, she's some evil person. That's what Ginny, this is why I call her Virginia. That's why Ginny basically was trying to make her feel like Georgia was some type of villain, evil villain, and, everybody should be, scared of her. I'm glad that Ginny is getting the help that she needs, definitely. And, Zion basically have her to go to a black therapist. I'm glad that this season they showcased Ginny having, I guess, a diverse friend group. She has Bracia and her friend group. She gets to interact with her father more, things of that nature. Obviously, with having a white mother, Georgia is not going to understand, what she goes through. Obviously, Georgia does try to defend Ginny in the best of her abilities. Obviously, when Mr. Gittin was getting on her, she obviously was like, do you want me to do something about it? And she really was going to do something about it. That was kind of reckless. But Georgia basically would do anything to protect her kids. And I'm just like, it's not so much putting something on Ginny to carry or have a burden. She always tells Ginny, let me take all the, you know, the bad stuff or eat all the bad stuff, you know, and I'll do it for you. You don't have to do it. That's what she's basically saying. Like, even in that speech, she's like, I will do it for you. You don't have to do anything. So it's not for Ginny to carry the burden. Obviously, she'll probably carry the burden of knowing that, oh yeah, this is what my mother did or whatever. But it's really for, you know, it's just if anything goes wrong in your life, you have a protector. You have somebody to look out for you. And that's what basically Georgia, in her own terms or her way, basically telling her daughter that's what she was going to do. That's what she's going to do for her. This season, you know, spread some light. Ginny was being happy, but obviously, you know, she was getting the help that she needed. Everything was looking up, you know what I'm saying? But then things happened. So I would say on the terms of this entire season as a whole, like, I'm still on Ginny because this Ginny has like a lot to go through. As to terms of the season as a whole, I would say everybody, there was basically no tied ends. Everybody has a loose end. The only person that had like a happy ending to the season 2 was Bracia and Brian. That was the only 2 people, because everybody's going through something. Literally, everybody's going through something. So she's getting the help that she needs. She's able to appreciate the sacrifices and things that her mom had to go through, and, you know, able to still, you know, to communicate to her mother, you know, what's going on or what type of boundary that she, you know, wants to set for herself and stuff like that. And it seems like she's doing better. So she seems tolerable this season. So I would say the first 3 episodes are very much overbearing, because just all you have is just like hatred for Georgia. And it's just like, why are you hating Georgia? So, I mean, why? Because you got to understand, the blame has to be put on the PI. Why is the PI talking to Ginny, who's still underage, talking to Ginny, basically, you know, putting all this information about your mother on the table to her, even though Ginny needs to be old enough to understand that? Like, you gotta blame the PI. You can't put it all on Georgia, like, oh, Georgia basically told Ginny all this information. Now, let's get into Georgia. In defense of Georgia, let's go. Okay, so I was good with Georgia. I was like, Georgia, don't let them bother you. You're good, you good, you good. But obviously, in this season, towards the end, Georgia made some questionable decisions, and I was just like, Georgia, why? The only thing that I would say this season about Georgia is that, obviously throughout the season, she just felt like she wasn't doing enough for her kids, or she felt like she wasn't worth it. You know, you hear from Paul's parents that, you know, Georgia never got a degree, or she never went to finish high school or stuff like that. You know, Georgia's uneducated. And then you also hear that, you know, she has 2 kids from 2 different fathers. So you always got that stigmatized with Georgia. Then you hear from Zahn's parents like, oh, Georgia only cares about herself, you know, she doesn't care about her kids, da da da. So you have basically from 2 different households or 2 different parents, or, you know, that Georgia's this bad person, or Georgia's not this fit mother or fit person to marry Paul and stuff like that. So you're just basically hearing, you know, obviously Georgia hear that firsthand, that, oh, this is what happened. So you kind of feel bad because, you know, Georgia's trying her best, and it's just like, whoa, you got everybody just basically bothering you. So I liked at the, again, Christmas dinner, you know, Georgia basically said, you know, I was still able to get them here. I got them this far on her own.
You in Austin. You're my future. Right then and there, you were never going to be like me. You were going to be like them. And I knew I would do anything to make that happen. And it took a long time, and it wasn't easy, but I did it. I got you on that bus with those kids.
I I would say when Ginny was like, why wasn't Zion here to see how awful, I guess, Georgia was, or what Georgia was capable of. But the thing is, if Zion was there, Georgia wouldn't have to marry Anthony Green. Georgia wouldn't have to marry a Kenny. You know what I'm saying? Georgia wouldn't have to do all those things because Zion would have been there. So I'm just like, the only reason why Georgia would have all these different partners is to help her, have some stability while she's raising, her kids. But yeah, I'm just like, if Zion was there, she wouldn't have been, accidentally or intentionally killing anybody if Zion was there all this time. Zion was over there traveling the world and doing all this and that while Georgia was struggling with two of her kids. Well, she was struggling with her kid and, two of her kids basically for the most of the time. So I was just like, that was very ironic for Ginny to say, because I'm just like, if Zion was there, there wouldn't have been a necessary reason for her to be with these other guys. But yeah, back to Georgia. It just felt like I felt really bad because she was really trying her best, and it's just like, it seemed like her best wasn't good enough. You know what I'm saying? And then when you hear from Lynette that, oh, I would have offered you everything, but you ran off. But I think about in season 1, it was basically put to that Zion's parents was basically going to raise Ginny as their own. And I guess Georgia just never had a say in how to raise her own kid. And it felt like, that they were going to basically keep Ginny as their own without having any involvement with Georgia. And I guess with hearing all of that, Georgia felt the need that she needed to just pick up her child and run. So that's why she ran away. I mean, she did realize that, if she needed any help or anything like that, she could have easily or asked Lynette and, the Zion's father. Like, realized that towards the end, that she's like, maybe if I, didn't run away, I could have had help. But I'm just like, obviously that was a mistake on her part. Running away would have helped her, would have been better for her. But she obviously realized when she's older that, maybe if she didn't run away, she could have had help and she wouldn't have to be going through all that. But you got to understand that Georgia was literally 15, 16. She even mentioned it to Zion this season. She was like, she was 16 years old. She was still young. The same way people are saying like, oh, Ginny is just a kid. Georgia was literally just a kid going through all that she has to go through. And basically, Georgia learned everything that she learned by being street smart. Like they said, she didn't finish high school. She didn't go to college. She learned everything that she learned through is from being street smart. So, or having some type of little wisdom from the people that she surrounded herself with. But other than that Georgia basically got through taking care of her two kids basically on her own. That's why she always, says, her and her kids against the world, all that stuff. With that being said, I would say when Georgia was trying to, I guess, frame Professor Gittin or Mr. Gittin with, the magazine and the alcohol, I was like, I can understand why, Ginny would be upset with that and stuff like that, even though you're kind of going a little too far. But, so I was like, so I'm glad that, Ginny kind of caught her off with that. But then when episode 8 came around and, you see Georgia basically suffocate Tom Fuller to death with a pillow, and, Austin was basically in the closet watching her, I was just like, really? I was like, Georgia, like, you were on a clean slate. And, like, really? So, and then next thing, but the thing about it, episode 8 was, like, a little bit confusing, and it was meant to be confusing because episode 8 was from Marcus's point of view. So we'll get to that later. But when we see that, and we see that Austin sees that Georgia literally killed a person in front of him, I was just like, wow, how are we going to get away from this? So when we go to episode 9 and we basically see that they were both Cynthia and Georgia were basically both drinking alcohol. Cynthia realized that Gil was basically kind of abusing her, or basically shows, can see the signs that Gil is like an abusive person to Georgia, and she basically blacklists Gil from getting an apartment in Wellsbury, and then hearing that Cynthia basically wishes, for Tom to move on or pass on, so they can get into the grieving process. I guess with all that being centered around, that was Georgia's reasoning for why she was trying to do something nice for Cynthia. She really wasn't coming through with malicious. Obviously, if somebody was here to see, except for Austin, like somebody other than Austin was here to see what happened, they can understand what went wrong. But Georgia wasn't doing that out of maliciousness. She was basically just trying to be kind or help Cynthia out. So when that happened, I was just like, wow, really? So then when Nick came and told Jesse, or whatever his name is, that, Georgia called me and told me that Tom, died, and Georgia was right there, he was like, what? So then I guess he put 2 and 2 together, like, with everything that happened with Georgia, he was like, I don't think there's any evidence unless they found, fingerprints or something, or found that he didn't die of natural causes. Other than that, they probably can be like, okay, then it's Georgia. But I don't feel like there's any physical evidence that can really connect Georgia to the scene of the crime, unless Austin tells on Georgia, which I doubt he is, because Austin is actually a real one. Austin didn't even say nothing. Austin told Ginny, he was like, I didn't tell anyone, and then he started running after the police car. But other than that, that was basically Georgia's only offense this season, and it was really not out of maliciousness. She knew from the get-go that, Jesse, the PI, he didn't have any evidence to connect her to anything. He didn't have anything. He would just keep on. All he was doing was just going through her past, which going through her past is not going to find anything. He just has a lot of like circumstantial evidence against her, which, that's great. You can have circumstantial evidence, but other than that, that's not going to prove anything that happened. So yeah, so she was in the clear. She was really in the clear. I think the only other thing that she was kind of messy on was that she basically lied to Paul and said that she didn't have a second gun. And then when I saw Austin picked up the gun from underneath the dresser, I was just like, Georgia! Like, this is exactly what Paul was saying. He was saying that anybody could, if your kids find the gun and they can accidentally shoot it, you could have literally endangered your family. And when Austin picked up the gun, I was just like, really? This is exactly what Paul was saying. So that was like the only couple offenses that Georgia did this season. I was just like, please stop. But other than that, I feel like Georgia's not in season 3. Georgia's not gonna get, she's not gonna be in jail for long, because unless there's evidence, which I don't think there is, that ties Georgia to the scene of the crime, as like there's a fingerprint on the pillow, or they found out something happened, I don't think that she's gonna die. And especially with her being married to Paul, Paul can't even testify against her, because you once you're married, you can't really testify against each other. So that's another thing. And I don't think Austin's gonna tell anybody. He might tell Ginny, later on, but he didn't say nothing at all to Ginny. And yeah, other than that, I think that Georgia's gonna get off. I just feel like it sucks, because that was probably the most embarrassing thing that Georgia had to go through in front of Paul's parents, in front of her children, in front of the whole town hall. She gets arrested at her wedding, in front of basically everybody, in front of Zion's new girlfriend. I feel like that was the most embarrassing thing that Georgia had to go through. And I just feel bad, because just like she was basically feeling like she wasn't worthy of being married to Paul, and then they go ahead and basically embarrassed her on her wedding day for murder. And the thing about it is that she is guilty of the crime because she did suffocate him. So it's just like, you kind of feel bad for her, but she did do the crime. And the thing is that Jesse's feeling so proud of himself, like, yeah, I finally got her. But I don't think it's going to be for long. So we'll see. This is my defense for Georgia. Let's continue on to the other characters. Marcus. In episode 8, I was actually surprised that they had a Marcus-centered episode. Considering the fact that, I didn't think that was going to happen. But obviously, they're showcasing that Marcus was going through a lot of depression. And I guess Marcus has to fix himself first before he gets into a relationship. Or he's already in a relationship, but before he's like in a stable relationship with Ginny. Because the thing about it is that Ginny was also going through her situations, her problems, but I don't think he was focusing on himself. And then he's going through his he was going through his depression episode and, going through it. And he was basically, and the thing about it is that Ginny was basically getting it all wrong. She was basically eavesdropping on conversations, hearing that, oh, Marcus can't be with anybody like that, anybody right now. But it wasn't immense to Ginny. Ginny is, to him, he really cares about and loves Ginny. But he was just trying to fix himself, And before he can really, love somebody else, he has to love himself and fix himself. He's basically saying that his entire happiness is basically comes from being with Ginny. And he can't really put all of that weight on Ginny, especially with whatever Ginny is going through. So it was basically interesting that, they put a lot of depth into these characters. So, obviously right now he just needs a good friend. So obviously that's what's going to be Ginny being to Marcus for the time being. Then also, let's get to Max. Max just basically focusing on Sophie the entire season was just annoying. And her being mean to Abby and Ginny was just also annoying because Ginny didn't tell her about being with her brother. Like, the only person that really had to be rightfully upset was Hunter. Hunter, got cheated on and then he got lied to. So obviously, he should be upset. But also he did acknowledge that it wasn't, only Ginny's fault for why the relationship didn't work out. So that's what's going on. But Max, the entire season was kind of annoying, and she kind of figured out towards the end that, she needs to stop talking about herself in these friendships. She needs to be like more caring or compassionate with her friends as well. It's always about Max, but Max can't, worry about Ginny. When Ginny told Max, like, you're obviously in the class, you're seeing what Mr. Giddens doing, and you're all silent. Like, why do I have to be the one to, tell you what's going on with Mr. Giddens when you can see it? I also was like, wasn't Hunter right there? Hunter could have said something too. But I'm glad that they did a little, I guess, revolt or rebel, whatever, against Mr. Giddens, because she had to literally go down to 2 different classes, down 2 levels of classes, because she basically has a racist teacher, who basically tries to say that he's not, but, what he was doing was very much not good. So I'm glad that Zion basically found a way that she can get into college classes so she can be challenged, because when you see that English class and you see everybody just taking English as a joke and nobody's really doing what they need to do, obviously Ginny just felt so bad because she's not used to that. She's used to doing college level classes or doing something that challenges her, and to find out that because she had to punish herself because she couldn't be in Mr. Giddens' class, she just felt so bad for that. And I'm glad that, the people in her class, her friends, decided to, that's not right. and all that stuff. Also, let's talk about Abby. Abby from last season, she was still going through her eating disorder. Obviously when people call her whale legs, and obviously her and Preston are now together in the season in some sort of fashion. She's still going through her eating disorder, which is kind of sad. So a lot of these kids really need help and to work on themselves, which is kind of sad. But I think because of the divorce of her parents, and then I guess all the name calling that, her friends basically call her, she feels like she's not skinny enough. So she keeps on, I guess, throwing up her food. She keeps like binge eating, and then she throws up her food, which is just not good. So she's going through a lot. I think Preston might be the one to say something, but she also realizes that Samantha, she's also annoying, that does the same thing as well. So I guess, I don't know where that's gonna go, but that was also sad. Let's talk about Georgia's love interest, which are Zion, Joe, and Paul. I like Paul. The thing about it, Paul, I thought Paul was actually going to be bad, but Paul is just like a normal guy, which I just feel like you kind of like, I mean, she's married to Paul now, so obviously that's a thing. The only way that any type of Georgia and Joe is going to ever happen is if Paul dies, or if there's some type of cheating thing that happens, which I don't know. The thing about Zion is always going to be there for Georgia. He's always going to be there. The thing is that Zion always been there for Georgia since they met and had a kid together. And they obviously always, relapse and get back together and whatnot. So he's always going to be there. So, like, even though I wanted her to be with Zion in season 1, he's always going to be there. So right now, while they're married to other people, or, Georgia's married to Paul and he's dating Simone, I feel like he's always going to be there. Zion's the person that makes her feel safe. When Georgia found out that Marcus is the person that made Ginny feel safe as a guy, that's basically Zion for Georgia. Basically Zion for Georgia. So it's obviously going to be evident that even though Ginny and Marcus are not together right now, he's always going to be there for Ginny, just like Zion's always going to be there for Georgia. So that's the thing. That's like the parallel model you can see between these two people and these two relationships and stuff like that. Joe, is kind of like, you understand, Joe realized that Georgia always realized or knew that Joe was the guy from when she was 15, 16 years old. So Joe, he realized, because he's like, oh, you always think of everything. So, Georgia remembered everything, but, he was just he has a crush on Georgia, but obviously Georgia is with Paul, and, she can't do that to Paul. So I don't know how that relationship is going to go, but the only way that relationship would ever get anywhere is if he cheats, Georgia cheats on Paul, with Joe, or Paul ends up dying in some sort of fashion, which is just like, is the only way, because I don't know, or there's a divorce, I don't know, or he divorces Georgia, I don't know, but that's the only way. Okay. Obviously now that Georgia filled in Paul on everything that happened in the majority of her life, not everything, but the majority of everything that happened in her life, I feel like they're gonna be okay. Because obviously the only thing that he doesn't know about right now is that Georgia suffocated Tom Fuller as really big evidence. So I don't know, but he seems like he's gonna be there for Georgia. So I don't know. The Nick guy, does he have some still resentment towards Georgia? Because now that the PI probably filled in Nick on everything that happened, or everything that occurred in Georgia's life, is he gonna have this, what is he gonna have against Georgia? Because he was still having some type of something against Georgia, but what is he gonna have against Georgia? I don't know. Also, Austin's father, Gil, It was obviously the reason. There was a reason why Georgia was so scared of letting him know where they lived. It was obviously a reason why. Because if Georgia's scared, there's a reason why. So when he came in with this like false persona, or like this like really nice persona, and that, you know, Ginny and Austin never knew that their, you know, Gil was this abusive guy. It was obviously because due to Georgia keeping that away from them, like shielding that away from them. So when they found out that Gil was like abusing Georgia and stuff like that, you know, they realized what was going on. So I don't know. Gil might be the one to come back with some type of revenge. I don't know. I mean, Gil going to jail for embezzlement. He was already embezzling money. It's just he never got caught for it until Georgia did something dumb. Well, not dumb, but Georgia basically intentionally made him get caught from embezzling money, and that's why he went to jail. So yeah. Cynthia, I mean, I feel bad for Cynthia, you know, because obviously what she's going through, but when she still was like having this like issue with Georgia, like, what is your issue with Georgia? Besides Georgia like stealing the money, she still had an issue with Georgia with being uneducated and all that stuff, and this was like what's your issue? So obviously when she just realized, you know, Georgia's not that, you know, bad at all, she was just like, okay, good. Her and Joe having this like fling or affair was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why did he even have this in the show? Like, I was just like, why? And like, I was just confused. So Max and Marcus's parents was like very nice and sweet. Ellen, yeah, and the father, like, obviously, was just very nice and sweet. But like, as of season two was definitely better than season one. There was a lot of more depth. Like I said, having Bracia have like a good storyline with the whole play and everything, that was actually really nice to see, to have Bracia have like a whole storyline with the play, and her, you know, liking Brian, and then finding out that Brian actually also likes her too, which is like, oh, so sweet. Because you just think that in season one, Bracia was just there as a plot device or whatever, but now that she's actually like a character with a storyline, with things happening, you know, with seeing more than just one or two lines in the show, it was actually really nice for the writers to actually make Bracia like a main character, a main, you know, person in season two. So that was good to see. Other than that, season two was good. I might have missed a couple things, maybe, but I feel like I got all of the main points of season two. Can't wait to see what season three, you know, happens, because obviously now that Georgia's arrested, she obviously needs her defense team. So I'm trying to get her defense team rolling. I don't know, but I don't think she's gonna be in jail too long. I feel like she's gonna get off, or she's gonna get bail for sure. But other than that, season two was good. Can't wait to see their get renewed for season three, and what's going to occur in season three. Hopefully it's not going to take 2 years to see it. And anyway, guys, if you like this video, like the video, comment down below, let me know your thoughts, comments, concerns. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.